Carson Hocevar was able to salvage a second place finish at Atlanta, but a lot of controversy following the race. Let's break down everything that happened with Carson Hocevar this week. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about somebody that we haven't talked about too much on this show. I didn't talk about him a lot after Sunday's race. At least I didn't break down every single thing that happened, and that is the driver, the number 77 Spire Chevrolet, Carson Hocevar. This is his second year in the NASCAR Cup Series, and he's already made some aggressive moves in the minor leagues, trucks, and Xfinity that's gotten him suspensions, fines, a lot of negative attention. He's moved to the Cup Series, looks to be cleaning up some of that stuff, but unfortunately Sunday for him, a lot of drivers seem to be upset, but at the end of the day, he did finish second. Let's just sort of break down what happened. I didn't get to talk about it as much as I wanted to on Sunday following the race. And then, of course, there were a lot of comments coming out through the week. I wanted to wait till we got all those comments through today through Thursday evening in case anything new came out. We go to Circuit of the Americas this week. Speaking of Circuit of the Americas, we do have a new track layout, a shorter circuit for the Circuit of the Americas this week. So that's certainly interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on that going into this race weekend. But Carson Hocevar, let's just talk about him. Want to do a quick video on him. A lot of interesting things to talk about. Bubba Wallace had some comments calling him aggressive on the radio during the race. Kyle Busch very clearly upset with Carson Hocevar in the middle stages of the race, calling Hocevar too aggressive, making some bad moves. Busch said he was going to run through him and just wreck the whole field trying to get to him. Just some comments there from Kyle Busch while he was upset on the radio. After the race, Ross Chastain went to approach Carson Hocevar. They had a discussion. Everything looked fairly friendly. I mean, there was obviously a discussion, and obviously Chastain was upset with what the 77 car did, but overall it was still a very tame conversation. Now, right behind him was Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney also had some words to exchange with Carson Hocevar. So a line of drivers waiting to talk to Carson Hocevar after the NASCAR Cup Series race in Atlanta. Let's just sort of break down what he did, right? He was certainly aggressive all race long. This seems to be what Ross Chastain was upset over, at least what everyone's assuming here is, and this was talked about on Actions Detrimental this week by Denny Hamlin as well. Carson Hocevar, once again, on that bottom lane, I think there's a narrative now at Daytona, Talladega, and now Atlanta is that you all push. You all go at the green flag, and you keep pushing to help excel your line. That gives you the best opportunity to win. Well, Carson Hocevar turns up. That sort of leaves Ross Chastain, sort of wrung out, hanging to dry. He's going to fall back and lose a ton of position. I think Chastain still finished in the top 10, but barely today, barely at Atlanta. So certainly that was unfortunate for him. Really eliminated Ross Chastain's chance to win with only a couple laps to go remaining in the race on the final restart. But that did give Carson Hocevar a chance to win, which, surprisingly it did. I wouldn't have thought that would be the right move to make initially, but it turned out that it worked for him. It could have got him the win if the caution didn't come out. Got him a nice second place finish. So aggressive Carson Hocevar, not entirely what everybody else wanted Hocevar to do that was around him. Certainly interesting there. And I think you're going to see some drivers upset with Carson. We'll talk about the Blaney situation in just a little bit. You're going to see some of these drivers that always run up front get upset when somebody new runs up front, especially when they don't follow your narratives and your rules, right? We saw this with Ross Chastain, actually. Speaking of Chastain, we saw this with him in 2022, in 2023. Denny Hamlin did not like the way Ross Chastain was being aggressive up front. Chase Elliott didn't like it. Kyle Busch had comments about it constantly. A lot of drivers, I think Christopher Bell had comments about Ross Chastain. A lot of drivers did not like Ross Chastain in 2022, 2023, because that was when he was, new to running up front. Remember when Rick Hendrick had to have a talk with Ross Chastain? So sort of a similar situation there. Ross Chastain was probably a little more aggressive than what we've seen from Hocevar so far, but just sort of an example of whenever somebody new starts running up front, the drivers that are always up front don't like it. You can go to Joey Logano too. Many different examples of drivers that begin to run up front, all of a sudden they're no longer liked, those new front runners. So if he continues to run up front consistently, then that will eventually, they'll learn his driving style. He will start to blend in, whether he's, super aggressive or not, and he will start to learn some things as well. Interesting comments, Ryan Blaney after the race, basically just said, those are things that we think you should already know. You should already know that. That's not really learning. That's, You should know that you can't hit a car, in the rear, in the corner. You can take a look at what happened here at the end of the race. Now, luckily for Blaney, he was able to come back, get a top 5 finish, so that probably eased the pain a little bit of getting run into by Carson Hocevar, but certainly still got spun out. That could have ended his day if he'd have flew back up on the racetrack. Did a great job with the throttle, gassing it up when he needed to, turning the wheel left, all sorts of different things to save that race car. A lot was going on. He didn't just have the wheel turn left. A lot of mechanics were happening inside of the cockpit to stop that car from turning back up in the racetrack, hitting that inside wall. A lot of things he did to avoid that. Good job by Ryan Blaney. Came back to finish in the 4th position. Incredible job, but Blaney was very upset with Hocevar after the race. Blaney, up front now, running up front consistently, a champion, is going to be upset when a driver like that gets up front. So, for Carson Hocevar, what is really there for him moving forward? I think it's just continuing to learn, and you're going to see that. These drivers are not going to let him continue to make these mistakes. He's going to clean them up sooner or later. You saw it with Chastain. But, honestly, I don't think he did anything in this race, at least, really egregious. I don't think he flat out really caused a big wreck. He didn't really cause a big wreck in Daytona. The Blaney situation was bad, but there will be mistakes made in NASCAR Cup Series racing by all drivers. He will probably get better, and those mistakes will probably dwindle out. But Hocevar is going to be aggressive, and we're going to continue to see that aggression. We're going to see different driving style. We're going to see him not do what everybody else around him wants him to do, and that could be great for the personality of the sport. He's good to watch. He's fun to watch off the racetrack, but he's also fun to watch on the racetrack, and I would consider that a plus for the driver of the 77. So we're going to continue to watch him moving forward. That's it. All I really wanted to break down, once again, Circuit of the Americas. I'll obviously do a post-race video following NASCAR in Austin, Texas. Should be a good race, new layout. We'll break all that stuff down. But that's it. All I wanted to talk about following Carson Hocevar's comments all this week and that race in Atlanta. So, of course, let's get rowdy.